In the corner of the front room, there was a sizable built-in brick platform. It was about 18 inches high and had been constructed like a bed with one end against the wall. Lydia put some thick straw mats on its flat top and urged me to lie down and sleep while they watched over me. Rosa had lit a lantern and hung it on a nail above the bed. There was enough light to write. I explained to them that writing eased my tension and asked if it bothered them. "Why do you have to ask?" Lydia retorted. "Just do it." In the vein of a perfunctory explanation, I told them that I had always done some things, such as taking notes, which were strange even to Don Juan and Don Gennaro, and would perforce be strange to them. "We all do strange things," Lydia said dryly. I sat down on the bed under the lantern, with my back against the wall. They lay down next to me, one on each side. Rosa covered herself with a blanket and went to sleep, as if all she needed to do was to lie down. Lydia said that then was the appropriate time and place for us to talk, although she would prefer that I turn off the light because it made her sleepy. Our conversation in the darkness centered around the whereabouts of the other two girls. She said that she could not even imagine where La Gorda was, but that Josefina was undoubtedly in the mountains, still looking for Nestor, even though it was dark. She explained that Josefina was the most capable one to take care of herself in eventualities, such as being in a deserted place in the dark. That was the reason why La Gorda had selected her to run that errand. I mentioned that in listening to them talk about La Gorda, I had formed the opinion that she was the boss. Lydia replied that La Gorda was indeed in charge, and that the Nahual himself had put her in command. She added that even if he had not done so, La Gorda would have taken over sooner or later because she was the best. I was compelled at that point to light the lantern in order to write. Lydia complained that the light made it impossible to stay awake, but I prevailed. "What makes La Gorda the best?" I asked. "She has more personal power," she said. "She knows everything. Besides, the Nahual taught her how to control people." "Do you envy La Gorda for being the best?" "I used to, but not now." "Why did you change?" "I finally accepted my fate, as the Nahual told me." "And what is your fate?" "My fate? My fate is to be the breeze, to be a dreamer. My fate is to be a warrior." "Do Rosa and Josefina envy La Gorda?" "No, they don't. All of us have accepted our fates. The Nahual said that power comes only after we accept our fate without recriminations. I used to complain a lot and feel terrible because I liked the Nahual. I thought I was a woman, but he showed me that I was not. He showed me that I was a warrior. My life had ended before I met him. This body that you see here is new. The same thing happened to all of us. Perhaps you are not like us, but to us, the Nahual was a new life. When he told us that he was going to leave because he had to do other things, we thought we would die. But look at us now. We're alive. And do you know why? because the Nahual showed us that we were himself. He's here with us. He'll always be here. We are his body and his spirit. Do all four of you feel the same way? We are not four. We are one. That is our fate. We have to carry each other, and you are the same. All of us are the same. Even Soledad is the same, although she goes in a different direction. And Pablito, Nestor, and Benigno, where do they fit? We don't know. We don't like them. Especially Pablito. He's a coward. He has not accepted his fate and wants to wriggle out of it. He even wants to chuck his chances as a sorcerer and live an ordinary life. That'll be great for Soledad, but the Nahual gave us orders to help him. We are getting tired of helping him, though. Maybe one of these days, La Gorda will push him out of the way forever. Can she do that? Can she do that? Of course she can. She's got more of the Nahual than the rest of us. Perhaps even more than you. Why do you think the Nahual never told me that you were his apprentices? Because you're empty. Did he say that I was empty? Everyone knows you're empty. It is written on your body. How can you tell that? There is a hole in the middle. In the middle of my body? Where? She very gently touched the spot on the right side of my stomach. She drew a circle with her finger as if she were following the edges of an invisible hole, 4 or 5 inches in diameter. Are you empty yourself, Lydia? Are you kidding? I am complete. Can't you see? Her answers to my questions were taking a turn that I had not expected. I did not want to antagonize her with my ignorance. I shook my head affirmatively. Why do you think I have a hole here that makes me empty? I asked after deliberating what the most innocent question would be. She did not answer. She turned her back to me and complained that the light of the lantern bothered her eyes. I insisted on a response. She faced me defiantly. I don't want to talk to you anymore, she said. You are stupid. Not even Pablito is that stupid, and he's the worst. I did not want to end up in another blind alley by pretending that I knew what she was talking about. So I asked her again, what caused my emptiness? I coaxed her to talk, giving her ample assurances that Don Juan had never explained that topic to me. He had said time and time again that I was empty, and I understood him the way any Western man would understand that statement. I thought he meant that I was somehow void of determination, will, purpose, or even intelligence. He had never spoken to me about a hole in my body. There is a hole there on the right side, she said matter-of-factly. A hole that a woman made when she emptied you. Would you know who the woman is? Only you can tell that. The Nahual said that men, most of the time, cannot tell who had emptied them. Women are more fortunate. They know for a fact who emptied them. Are your sisters empty like me? Don't be stupid. How could they be empty? Doña Soledad said that she was empty. Does she look like me? No, the hole in her stomach was enormous. It was on both sides. which meant that a man and a woman emptied her. What did Doña Soledad do with a man and a woman? She gave her completeness to them. I vacillated for a moment before asking the next question. I wanted to assess all the implications of her statement. La Gorda was even worse than Soledad, Lydia went on. 2 women emptied her. The hole in her stomach was like a cavern, but now she has closed it. She is complete again. Tell me about those 2 women. I just can't tell you anything more, she said in a most imperative tone. Only La Gorda can speak to you about this matter. Wait until she comes. Why only La Gorda? Because she knows everything. Is she the only one who knows everything? The witness knows as much, maybe even more. But he is Gennaro himself, and that makes him very difficult to handle. We don't like him. Why don't you like him? Those 3 bums are awful. They are crazy like Gennaro. Well, they are Gennaro himself. They are always fighting us because they were afraid of the Nahual, and now they are taking their revenge on us. That's what La Gorda says anyway. And what makes La Gorda say that? The Nahual told her things he didn't tell the rest of us. She sees. The Nahual said that you also see. Josefina, Rosa, and I don't see, and yet all 5 of us are the same. We are the same. The phrase, "we are the same," which Doña Soledad had used the night before, brought on an avalanche of thoughts and fears. I put my writing pad away. I looked around. I was in a strange world, lying in a strange bed, in between 2 young women I did not know. And yet, I felt at ease, there. My body experienced abandon and indifference. I trusted them. Are you going to sleep here? I asked. Where else? How about your own room? We can't leave you alone. We feel the same way you do. You are a stranger, except that we are bound to help you. La Gorda said that no matter how stupid you are, we have to look after you. She said we have to sleep in the same bed with you as if you were the Nahual himself. Lydia turned off the lantern. I remained sitting with my back against the wall. I closed my eyes to think, and I fell asleep instantly. Lydia, Rosa, and I had been sitting on a flat area just outside the front door for nearly 2 hours, since 8 o'clock in the morning. I had tried to steer them into a conversation, but they had refused to talk. They seemed to be very relaxed, almost asleep. Their mood of abandonment was not contagious, however. Sitting there in that forced silence had put me into a mood of my own. Their house sat on top of a small hill. The front door faced the east. From where I sat, I could see almost the entire narrow valley that ran from east to west. I could not see the town, but I could see the green areas of cultivated fields on the floor of the valley. On the other side and flanking the valley in every direction, there were gigantic, round, eroded hills. There were no high mountains in the vicinity of the valley, only those enormous eroded round hills, the sight of which created in me the most intense feeling of oppression. I had the sensation that those hills were about to transport me to another time. Lydia spoke to me all of a sudden, and her voice disrupted my reverie. She pulled my sleeve. "Here comes Josefina," she said. I looked at the winding trail that led from the valley to the house. I saw a woman walking slowly up the trail, perhaps 50 yards away. I noticed immediately the remarkable difference in age between Lydia and Rosa and the approaching woman. I looked at her again. I would never have thought Josefina to be that old. Judging by her slow gait and the posture of her body, she seemed to be a woman in her mid-50s. She was thin, wore a long, dark skirt, and was carrying a load of firewood on her back. She had a bundle tied around her waist. It looked as though she had a bundled-up child riding on her left hip. She seemed to be breastfeeding it as she walked. Her steps were almost feeble. She could barely make the last steep slope before reaching the house. When she finally stood in front of us, a few yards away, she was panting so heavily that I attempted to help her sit down. She made a gesture that seemed to say that she was all right. I heard Lydia and Rosa giggling. I did not look at them because my total attention had been taken by assault. The woman in front of me was absolutely the most disgusting, foul creature I had ever seen. She untied the bundle of firewood and dropped it on the floor with a loud clatter. I jumped involuntarily, due in part to the loud noise and in part to the fact that the woman nearly fell on my lap, pulled by the weight of the wood. She looked at me for an instant and then lowered her eyes, seemingly embarrassed by her clumsiness. She straightened her back and sighed with apparent relief. Obviously, the load had been too great for her old body. As she stretched her arms, her hair fell partially loose. She was wearing a soiled headband tied over her forehead. Her hair was long and graying and seemed dirty and matted. I could see the white hairs against the dark brown of the headband. She smiled at me and sort of nodded her head. All her teeth seemed to be missing. I could see the black hole of her toothless mouth. She covered her face with her hand and laughed. She took off her sandals and walked into the house without giving me time to say anything. Rosa followed her. I was dumbfounded. Doña Soledad had implied that Josefina was the same age as Lydia and Rosa. I turned to Lydia. She was peering at me. I had no idea she was that old, I said. Yes, she's pretty old, she said in a matter-of-fact tone. Does she have a child? I asked. Yes, and she takes him everywhere. She never leaves him with us. She's afraid we are going to eat him. Is it a boy? A boy? How old is he? She's had him for some time, but I don't know his age. We thought that she shouldn't have a child at her age. but she didn't pay attention to us. Whose child is he? Josefina's, of course. I mean, who's the father? The Nawal. Who else? I thought that development was quite extravagant and very unnerving. I suppose anything is possible in the Nawal's world, I said. I meant it more as a thought to myself than a statement made to Lydia. You bet, she said, and laughed. The oppressiveness of those eroded hills became unbearable. There was something truly abhorrent about that area, and Josefina had been the final blow. On top of having an ugly, old, smelly body and no teeth, she also seemed to have some sort of facial paralysis. The muscles on the left side of her face appeared to be injured, a condition which created a most unpleasant distortion of her left eye and the left side of her mouth. My oppressive mood plummeted to one of sheer anguish. For an instant, I toyed with the idea, so familiar by then, of running to my car and driving away. I complained to Lydia that I did not feel well. She laughed and said that Josefina had no doubt scared me. She has that effect on people, she said. Everybody hates her guts. She's uglier than a cockroach. I remember seeing her once, I said, but she was young. Things change, Lydia said philosophically, one way or another. Look at Soledad. What a change, huh? And you yourself have changed. You look more massive than I remember you. You are looking more and more like the Nawal. I wanted to say that the change in Josefina was abhorrent, but I was afraid that she might overhear me. I looked at the eroded hills across the valley. I felt like fleeing from them. The Nawal gave us this house, she said, but it is not a house for rest. We had another house before that was truly beautiful. This is a place to steam up. Those mountains over there will drive you nuts. Her boldness in reading my feelings gave me a respite. I did not know what to say. We are all naturally lazy, she went on. We don't like to strain ourselves. The Nawal knew that, so he must have figured that this place would drive us up the walls. She stood up abruptly and said that she wanted something to eat. We went to the kitchen, a semi-enclosed area with only 2 walls. At the open end, to the right of the door, there was an earthen stove. At the other end, where the 2 walls met, there was a large dining area with a long table and 3 benches. The floor was paved with smooth river rocks. The flat roof was about 10 feet high and was resting on the 2 walls and on thick supporting beams on the open sides. Lydia poured me a bowl of beans and meat from a pot which cooked on a very low fire. She heated up some tortillas over the fire. Rosa came in and sat down next to me and asked Lydia to serve her some food. I became immersed in watching Lydia use a ladle to scoop the beans and meat, a ladle. She seemed to have an eye for the exact amount. She must have been aware that I was admiring her maneuvers. She took two or three beans from Rosa's bowl and returned them to the pot. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Josefina coming into the kitchen. I did not look at her, though. She sat facing me across the table. I had a squeamish feeling in my stomach. I felt that I could not eat with that woman looking at me. To ease my tension, I joked with Lydia that there were still 2 extra beans in Rosa's bowl that she had overlooked. She scooped up 2 beans with a ladle with a precision that made me gasp. I laughed nervously, knowing that once Lydia sat down, I would have to move my eyes from the stove and acknowledge the presence of Josefina. Finally, and reluctantly, I had to look across the table at Josefina. There was a dead silence. I stared at her incredulously. My mouth fell open. I heard the loud laughter of Lydia and Rosa. It took an endless moment for me to put my thoughts and feelings in some sort of order. Whoever was facing me was not the Josefina I had seen just a while ago, but a very pretty girl. She did not have Indian features as Lydia and Rosa did. She seemed to be more Latin than Indian. She had a light olive complexion, a very small mouth, and a finely chiseled nose, small white teeth, and short black curly hair. She had a dimple on her left side of her face, which gave a definite cockiness to her smile.